Most of us pick a shampoo, stick with it for years, and never look at the ingredient list. That loyalty is understandable. These are products we've used since childhood, brands that feel familiar and safe. But some of those familiar brands contain ingredients that dermatologists, EU regulators, and independent cosmetic chemists have raised serious concerns about. Some have faced lawsuits. One had its key active ingredient banned outright by European regulators in 2022. Today I'm going through 9 shampoo brands worth reconsidering, being clear about exactly what the concern is and how serious it actually is, and finishing with 2 brands that genuinely deliver what their labels promise. No exaggeration, no scare tactics. Just the ingredient facts and what they mean for your scalp. Set *9. Imperial Leather Shampoo. Imperial Leather is a brand most British households grew up with. The soap has been a bathroom staple for generations, and the shampoo benefits from every ounce of that trust. The ingredient list tells a different story. Sodium lauryl sulfate, commonly abbreviated SLS, sits near the top. SLS is one of the strongest surfactants used in personal care products. It's effective at removing dirt and oil, but it removes them indiscriminately, stripping the scalp's natural protective barrier along with everything else. Dermatologists routinely flag SLS as a common cause of contact dermatitis and scalp irritation, particularly in people with already sensitive skin. For anyone managing eczema, psoriasis, or chronic dry scalp, a high SLS formula can worsen symptoms rather than simply clean hair. The synthetic fragrance blend is the other notable concern. Imperial Leather's distinctive scent is a complex fragrance formulation. UK labelling rules require only the word parfum to appear on the label. The individual chemicals making up that fragrance don't have to be disclosed. Some fragrance ingredients are known skin sensitises with long-term exposure implications. The heritage branding is genuine. Imperial Leather has real history. The ingredient standards, unfortunately, haven't kept pace with what we now know about scalp health. What to look for instead? A shampoo with plant-derived surfactants and clearly listed fragrance components or fragrance-free options if your scalp is sensitive. Set *8. Alberto Balsam. Alberto Balsam is the budget family shampoo. Bright bottles, fruit scents, £1.50 a bottle. It's bought without much thought, often for children, because it seems cheerful and harmless. The concern here is specific and well documented. Some Alberto Balsam formulations have contained methylchlorothiazolinone and methylisothiazolinone, 2 preservatives commonly abbreviated as MCI-MI. The EU Scientific Committee on Consumer Safety spent several years reviewing these chemicals and concluded they were causing a significant rise in contact allergy rates across Europe. The EU subsequently banned them from leave on cosmetic products and restricted their use in rinse-off products like shampoo. The distinction matters. As a rinse-off product, Alberto Balsam is technically within regulatory limits. But within regulatory limits and without risk aren't the same thing. These preservatives make contact with the scalp during washing. For people with sensitive skin or a compromised skin barrier, which becomes more common with age, that contact window is long enough to trigger reactions in susceptible individuals. The characteristic fruity scent is also entirely synthetic. The raspberry, apple and coconut variants contain no fruit extracts. The scent is a fragrance formulation, and as with Imperial Leather, the individual components don't have to be disclosed on the label. The practical note. If you or your family have experienced persistent scalp redness or itching that clears up when you stop using a product, MCI-MI sensitivity is a known and common cause. A patch test or a trial swap to a preserved differently formulation is worth doing. *7. Herbal Essences Classic Range. The Herbal Essences branding is built almost entirely on the suggestion of natural botanical ingredients. The name, the packaging design, the advertising imagery, all of it implies plant-based gentle care. The ingredient that sits most uncomfortably alongside that image is DMDM-hydantoin. It's a preservative that works by slowly releasing formaldehyde to prevent microbial growth in the formula. Formaldehyde is classified by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as a known human carcinogen. The amounts released by DMDM-hydantoin in a shampoo formulation are small, and the level of actual risk from a rinse-off product is a matter of ongoing debate among cosmetic scientists. But the presence of a formaldehyde-releasing preservative in a product marketed as herbal and botanical is a straightforward contradiction that consumers deserve to know about. The synthetic dyes present in several variants are a secondary concern. They serve no functional purpose. They don't clean or condition hair. They're added for shelf appeal. If you're trying to minimize unnecessary chemical exposure, artificial colorants in a shampoo are an obvious starting point for removal. The name says herbal. The key preservative releases formaldehyde. Those two facts can both be true simultaneously, and they're both worth knowing. Ser *6, Pantene Pro V Pantene has built its brand on the language of science. Clinical testing, provitamin B5, laboratory proven results. It's one of the most credible sounding personal care brands on the market. The most consistent criticism from both consumers and independent hair care analysts concerns silicone buildup. Pantene formulas rely heavily on dimethicone, a silicone that coats each hair strand to create the perception of smoothness and shine. In the short term, this works well. Hair feels immediately soft and manageable. Over weeks of regular use, however, silicone accumulates on the hair shaft and on the scalp. Independent cosmetic chemists have described this as a coating effect. Hair that looks healthy because the surface is smooth, while the underlying condition of the hair and scalp is masked rather than addressed. For people managing scalp conditions who are also using medicated topical treatments, this silicone layer has a practical implication. It can reduce the absorption of creams or ointments applied to the scalp, effectively reducing the efficacy of prescribed treatments. The sulfate base that underlies the formula also strips natural oils efficiently enough that the scalp may overproduce oil in response, a known paradox with high sulfate shampoos where frequent washing produces the oiliness it's meant to solve. Asterisk, the honest assessment, Pantene is not dangerous in the way that some claims online suggest, but the silicone-heavy formula prioritizes the appearance of healthy hair over actual scalp health, and that distinction matters if you're managing an underlying condition. Asterisk 5. Tresemme. Tresemme markets directly at the salon quality space, professional results without the professional price tag. It's a compelling pitch, and one that made it one of the UK's most popular shampoo brands. In 2021 and 2022, Unilever, the corporation that owns Tresemme, faced a class action lawsuit in the United States. The allegation was that Tresemme products containing DMDM hydantoin, the same formaldehyde-releasing preservative flagged in the herbal essences section, were directly linked to hair loss and severe scalp irritation in a significant number of consumers. Unilever subsequently recalled certain Tresemme products in the US. The important question for UK consumers is whether the UK formulation matches the American one. UK formulations have contained DMDM hydantoin. Whether specific current variants still do requires checking individual product labels, because formulations can change, and Unilever has not always been transparent about when and why changes are made. The lawsuit is a matter of public record. The link between DMDM hydantoin and hair loss concerns is the subject of ongoing scientific discussion rather than settled consensus. But the scale of reported consumer complaints and the subsequent recall makes this more than routine noise. Asterisk, the practical advice. Check the current ingredient list of whichever Tresemme product you use. If DMDM hydantoin is present and you've experienced unexplained scalp irritation or unusual hair loss, it's a relevant data point for your GP. Say asterisk 4. Elvive by L'Oreal. L'Oreal Elvive occupies the premium mass market tier. The product names, Total Repair, Extraordinary Oil, Dream Lengths, promise meaningful results, and the price reflects that positioning. The concern raised by independent cosmetic chemists is a straightforward one. The gap between what's on the front of the bottle and what the formula actually contains. Elvive's selling point is its hero ingredients: argan oil, hyaluronic acid, keratin. These appear prominently in the branding and advertising. On the ingredient list, they often appear near the bottom, in concentrations that cosmetic chemists describe as functionally minimal. Ingredients at the very end of a list are present in trace quantities, frequently below 1% of the total formula. This isn't unique to L'Oreal. It's a widespread practice in cosmetic marketing. But Elvive's pricing and claims are built specifically on these ingredients, which makes the gap between promised and actual concentration more commercially significant. The base formula, meanwhile, uses the same sulfate surfactants found in budget shampoos at a fraction of the price. The premium price is buying the branding around those trace ingredients, not a meaningfully different formula. For people with seborrheic dermatitis or scalp psoriasis, the aggressive detergent base can strip fragile scalps and, as with Pantene, potentially interfere with the absorption of prescribed topical treatments applied to the same area. Asterisk, the honest summary. Elvive is not harmful in any dramatic sense, but the premium price is not justified by the formula, and for sensitive scalps, the sulfate base is worth reconsidering regardless of price. Asterisk 3. Head & Shoulders. Head & Shoulders is Britain's most recognized anti-dandruff shampoo. For decades, it was the first recommendation GPs and pharmacists reached for when patients mentioned flaking or dandruff. That recommendation was based on a genuine active ingredient, zinc pyrithione, that had solid clinical evidence behind it. In 2022, the European Union banned zinc pyrithione from cosmetic products. The EU's classification system placed it in the CMR category, a designation reserved for substances assessed as carcinogenic, mutagenic, or toxic to reproduction. This isn't a minor precautionary restriction. CMR classification represents a serious regulatory conclusion. Head & Shoulders reformulated. The replacement active ingredient is pyroxetone olamine, which has its own evidence base for anti-dandruff efficacy. The reformulation was, in regulatory terms, the correct response. What's worth scrutinizing is the communication, or the lack of it. The bottle looks the same. The branding is unchanged. The dandruff-free promise is identically worded. The millions of loyal customers who had used the product for years were not clearly informed that the core active ingredient had been replaced because EU regulators classified it as a CMR substance. There are two separate issues here. The first is backward-looking. People who used the original formula for years were using a substance that regulators ultimately banned. The second is about transparency. Consumers who trust a brand through a significant reformulation deserve to be told it happened and why. Ask the practical note. The current reformulated Head & Shoulders no longer contains zinc pyrithione. If anti-dandruff efficacy is your priority, the new formula has a different mechanism, and your response to it may differ from your response to the original. Asterisk 2. Timote's brand identity is almost entirely built on the concept of purity. The waterfall imagery, the mountain stream aesthetic, the positioning as the gentle, natural choice. For an entire generation of British consumers, Timote was the shampoo you chose specifically because it felt cleaner and softer than the alternatives. The ingredient list is where that identity meets reality. Sodium lauryl sulfate, the slightly milder cousin of sodium lauryl sulfate, is the primary surfactant. Synthetic fragrance is listed. Standard chemical preservatives appear throughout. The formula is, by any objective reading, a conventional mass-market shampoo formulation. The gap between Timote's marketing and its actual formulation is arguably the widest on this list. Other brands overstate the effectiveness of their premium ingredients or obscure the presence of concerning ones. Timote's issue is more fundamental. The entire brand proposition, the purity and naturalness that justify consumer choice, has no meaningful basis in the formulation at all. This matters practically because people who choose Timote specifically because they believe it's gentler may not investigate further. If you have a sensitive scalp and you're using Timote because the marketing told you it was the soft, natural option, you deserve to know that the formula doesn't support that claim. The simple fact. Asterisk Timote is a standard mass-market shampoo with standard mass-market ingredients. The purity branding is a marketing construct, not a formulation reality. Se, asterisk 1. Wash and Go. Wash and Go is a cultural reference point for anyone who grew up in 1990s Britain. The two-in-one concept felt genuinely innovative at the time. Shampoo and conditioner in a single step, saving time without sacrificing results. It was everywhere, and for a generation it became a bathroom default that many people have simply never revisited. The two-in-one formula presents a fundamental challenge that the brand has never quite resolved. Shampoo surfactants work by removing oils and deposits from the hair. Conditioning agents work by depositing a coating onto the hair. Combining both in one formula requires chemical compromises that serve neither function optimally. Wash and Go resolves this tension primarily through silicone deposits, similar to the dimethicone approach used by Pantene. The silicones coat stripped hair to produce an immediate sensation of softness, creating the impression that conditioning has occurred. Over repeated use, this silicone accumulates on the scalp and hair shaft in the same way described in the Pantene section. For anyone experiencing hair thinning or scalp sensitivity, silicone buildup around follicles is a recognized concern. It doesn't cause hair loss on its own, but it can contribute to a scalp environment that's less than optimal for follicle health. The nostalgia attached to Wash and Go is real and understandable. The formula, however, is a decades-old product that hasn't changed significantly in a category where understanding of scalp health has moved on considerably. Asterisk 2 worth buying. Asterisk safe pick 1. Faith in Nature is a British brand, and it's one of the most transparently formulated shampoos available in the mainstream UK market. The brand holds Soil Association Cosmos Natural certification, an independently verified standard that requires external auditing of sourcing, formulation, and manufacturing. This isn't a self-awarded label. It requires documented compliance with specific ingredient and process standards that most mainstream brands couldn't pass. The surfactants are plant-derived, primarily from coconut. They clean effectively without the aggressive stripping associated with SLS. There are no parabens, no artificial fragrances, no silicones, and no formaldehyde-releasing preservatives. The fragrances used are genuinely essential oil-based. Lavender variants smell like lavender because they contain lavender oil. Tea tree variants smell like tea tree because they contain tea tree extract. The difference from synthetic fragrance is immediately apparent when you open the bottle. The formula rinses completely clean. No silicone residue, no waxy buildup. For people who've experienced the coated feeling that builds up with silicone-heavy shampoos, the clean rinse is noticeable from the first wash. Faith in Nature is widely available in Holland and Barrett, many supermarkets, and online. It sits at a slightly higher price point than budget shampoos, but lower than most brands positioning themselves as premium. For the formulation quality, it represents straightforward value. Safe Pick 2. Neal's Yard Remedies. Neal's Yard Remedies is the most rigorously certified option on the UK market for consumers prioritizing ingredient transparency and independently verified organic standards. Their shampoos are manufactured at their own facility in Dorset, not contract manufactured and white-labeled, but produced in-house with full control over every ingredient and every batch. They hold Soil Association organic certification and have consistently scored at the top of Ethical Consumer Magazine's ratings for ingredient transparency and environmental responsibility. The formulations are free from sulfates, silicones, synthetic preservatives, and artificial fragrances. The scents come from genuine essential oil blends, complex, restrained, and noticeably different from synthetic fragrance formulations. For people managing chronic scalp conditions, for anyone on medication that requires careful thought about what comes into contact with their skin, or for anyone who has simply decided to reduce cumulative chemical exposure from daily use products, Neal's Yard offers one of the cleanest and most verifiable ingredient profiles available on the British High Street. The price is higher than any other brand mentioned in this video. Whether that premium is appropriate depends on what you're prioritizing. For ingredient transparency and certification rigor, it is genuinely earned. 9 brands, 9 legitimate concerns, ranging from outright regulatory bans to the quieter problem of marketing that doesn't match formulation. The practical takeaway isn't that you need to immediately throw out everything in your shower. It's that a 2-minute look at an ingredient list tells you far more than the front of the bottle ever will. Look for the surfactant type. Check for DMDM hydantoin or MCI-MI if you have a sensitive scalp, and treat any claim of natural or pure as a prompt to flip the bottle over rather than a reason to stop reading. If this breakdown was useful, subscribe to Truthcart UK for more honest product analysis. No affiliate arrangements, no sponsored recommendations, just the ingredient reading most brands are counting on you not doing.